So maybe you want to get a case like this, NCore 100 Air, which can only run a little cooler like this. And you're wondering what happens if I 9950X 3D? Well, welcome to Machines More. 9950X 3D retail availability is today. Go ahead and check out our links down below if you are shopping. You know, I thought to myself, someone is going to want to do this, right? Run it on a little cooler. So let me entertain the thought, because for most of you, this is actually going to be entertainment value. Full review is inbound for the NCore 100 Air. We'll go ahead and use it in our testing today. In one corner, full power 9950X 3D will draw down 200 watts. In the other corner, an air cooler like Thermalright's AXP120X67 can do an admirable job, and it's going to be adequate in a gaming only situation like it is for the 9800X 3D. But if you're just gaming, this is complete overkill, right? Just get the 9800X 3D. But for sure, there is not enough cooler here for the 9950X 3D in a full power scenario. I really would start at big air cooler, a 240 radiator minimum. For an SFF build like this, we're definitely going to have to make some adjustments and compromises, and we're going to see just how much and how to do that today. Okay, let's see what happens first if we don't touch anything and just use it as is. Got the NCore 100 Air here, Thermalright AXP120X67. This uses B850 ITX 9070 XT with 2 exhaust fans. The way the case is set up is quite conducive to encouraging good airflow directly into the air cooler, and it even has cutouts, and you'll see that in the review. The way modern CPUs run, they'll boost up to the max temp. Here it's 95 degrees. As it is thermally and cooling limited here, the boost algorithm does start dropping power and lowers the clocks. Now, sufficient cooler will allow this to continuously run at 200 watts, and it would be even better if the cooling solution would provide some headroom so you wouldn't have to be at the max fan RPMs here and have a lot of noise. Here for an extended Cinebench run, the CPU did hit thermal throttle relatively quickly, as you might expect. It did do better than I expected though, because at the end of 10 minutes, the CPU was still getting around about 175 watts. Now the boost algorithm doesn't give it straight up 175 watts, it does so in intervals and bursts. Clocks are still decent, about 4700 megahertz on CCD1, 4960 on CCD2, and the score I got was roughly 40,500. And compared to a 43,300 where I tested it for the full review and I gave it adequate cooling in a D15. So that is our reasonable baseline. And I guess you could call it stock performance with the setup in this case. And it's actually not terrible given the little cooler that we have, right? But we're completely maxed out with no headroom here. If you have a warmer room, it's going to be worse. It's going to be loud, right? If I can do better than this while drawing less power, I will also get better thermals, lower noise. Then I think that's good enough, right? Because we still have to accept some level of compromise with this type of cooling solution. So before we start manually limiting power to the CPU, let's go ahead and look at some power scaling benchmarks that I did. This was when it was equipped with the proper cooling in a D15 G2, and I set a power limit in 10 watt increments. That each step is a 5% reduction from the baseline of 200 watts each time. And I ran the benchmark just to get an idea of how the performance scales. So it's actually still pretty good, because for reference, at about 130 watts, the performance of the CPU is similar to a 7950X at full power, where the 7950X was spec'd at the same TDP as the 9950X 3D. So it would draw down similar amounts of power at full blast. So one tidbit to mention for gaming, as long as you don't set a power limit at or below what the CPU usually consumes, you're not going to see a gaming impact. 9950X 3D consumes around 100 watts. At a 100 watt power limit, you're going to see a very small impact because it's going to occasionally want to go above 100 watts and you're not letting it. When you set it at 110 watts, it'll be all encompassing for that. So we don't need to be going that low here, but this is just for confirmation. So you can see gaming is not going to see an impact. So it does look like the curve gets a little bit steeper between 140 and 150 watts. So that's not a bad place to target. At 150 watts, we are getting 91.6% of the score at full power, but this is a 25% power reduction. We can go into BIOS and go to manual PBO settings and first set our power limit. Before we do any undervolting, let's see how the performance is. temps are much better, about 80 degrees in my 21-degree ambient room. The Thermalright fan is topping out at 1900 RPM, so we would have a little bit headroom here up to the 2000 RPM that it can spin up to. We do have to be realistic though. 1900 RPM with a slim fan like this, not exactly quiet, but something's got to give at the end of the day, right? At the end of the 10-minute render score, 39K, I'm going to now start working up the undervolt. AMD's curve optimizer is the best way to do this. By setting a negative offset, you are shifting the voltage frequency curve, asking for higher clocks at lower voltage. So it is actually overclocking relative to the stock VF curve. And when combined with a power limit, you will be able to push higher clocks at the power level that you choose up to the limit of your silicon. So if you're lucky, you can run a bigger offset, and then it'll give you higher clocks at a given power level. We'll start at minus 15 on all cores, which in my experience is a good starting point. You can also do minus 10. If you do hit instability so early, tough luck. Don't play the lottery. It's still a good bump up, but hopefully you can get better. So next level, minus 20. We've pretty much gotten past the out-of-box performance with the setup, so to speak. So now we can get a little greedy. Minus 25, why not, right? Minus 35 was where I started seeing instability. Now I was able to get this ultimately to minus 30, and I tested it was wide cruncher stable, so it's not a terrible place to be on this chip. So you might think the cooler was getting the CPU to draw 175 watts or so. Does that mean we could just up the power back at this point? No, not necessarily. Since we are overclocking relative to the stock VF curve, it most likely would not be stable at 95 degrees versus the 79 to 80 degrees that I got this to, right? So we do have to be conscious of that. You do need to test for stability. Like I mentioned, I tested with Wire Cruncher, but you can just casually do what you normally do, game with it, render, whatever. As long as it's not critical. You also need to kind of idle with it too, because with the curve optimizer, you may run into stability when it's at low power. Kind of counterintuitive, but that is what happens. So if you do see some instability, you're going to need to dial down the magnitude of the offset. So to sum this one up, can you run the most OP consumer CPU on a low profile cooler? Yes. While you won't get 100% of what you can get out of it. In fact, how I tuned this one, it was about 95.7% of the Cinebench R23 score versus a full power knock to a D15 system with some headroom to boot. So sure, you could also overclock over stock power in that situation with plenty of cooling, but some of you are going to love a system like this, and that's worth something too. So yes, I hope you found that interesting. If it sounds too good to be true, welcome to the unbelievably fun world of SFF. And if you are interested in SFF content, there's plenty of that here. Just make sure you hit that subscribe button, give a like. CPU is launching today. You can get it. So if you're interested, definitely check the links down below. Big thanks for watching.